All Indiana Politics is your premier source for Indiana politics, focusing on issues that matter to you.
I still want us to be the best in the Midwest.
We can't afford another lockdown.
Give the citizens of this country the relief they need.
Education in the state of Indiana remains priority number one.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage.
We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January.
People are worried with good reason.
Exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders.
We have the resources here in the state of Indiana to care for those who are in need.
Expert analysis on critical legislation.
We need to reform those laws.
This recovery is going to take some time.
We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
I'm Garrett Bergquist, government reporter for Wish TV and the producer of All Indiana Politics. A tech entrepreneur says America needs to make long overdue investments in healthcare and workforce training to meet its future needs. Ryan Pfenninger is one of two Democrats running in the 5th Congressional District. That's Republican Congresswoman Victoria Spartz's seat. Pfenninger is a tech entrepreneur from Carmel. He tells me that background means he's a problem solver by nature. With us now is Ryan Pfenninger. Ryan, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
Why are you running for Congress?
It's a good question. I'm running for Congress because I want to ensure that our children have as many rights, if not more, growing up than we did. And I think the way things are going in our country, that's not a given, and it should be. For the last 250 years in America, we have been in the business of securing rights for the people. And I will stand firmly against anyone or anything trying to take those rights away. I believe that women should be able to make their own healthcare decisions, free from government interference. I believe that seniors should be able to retire with the Social Security benefits that they paid into their entire career, not taken away by the brushstroke of some politician in Washington, D.C., too uncreative to figure out a better solution. I believe, and I'm running for office because I think every child in the 5th District and in the state of Indiana deserves a world-class education that prepares them for the workplace of tomorrow or for higher education or vocational training or for whatever they go on to do. I believe that people shouldn't go broke because they get sick. I am running to make sure that people can afford to live in the 5th District with the wages they earn from high-quality jobs in the 5th District. Ultimately, I'm running to make sure that the American dream is still reachable by everyone.
Tell me about how your background has prepared you for this role.
For the past 20 years, I've built tech companies. I've created high-paying Hoosier jobs. I've invested in Indiana businesses and grown them, really spanning life science, advanced manufacturing, and software. So my background is very much about problem solving and investing capital to create things, to create jobs, to create businesses, to create positive outcome. And so, look, I'm not looking for another career. I've got one of those. I'm genuinely looking to serve. I want to go to Washington. I want to roll up my sleeves, sharpen the pencil on behalf of the people of the 5th District and the people of Indiana. And genuinely, rather than looking to figure out how best to get reelected on day one, really trying to figure out how to solve some of the big problems that people have been ignoring because they seem too hard to solve.
You've called for reversing the impact of the Dobbs decision on abortion access. Would you support federal legislation to protect access to abortion services?
100% I would. I think that, I believe, and as my wife likes to remind me, that every woman in this state, in the 5th District, in this country for that matter, is infinitely more capable of making their own healthcare decisions than some bureaucrat or politician in Washington or at the State House or sitting on a bench somewhere. And so I happen to believe that the Dobbs decision shattered women's ability to make their own healthcare decisions. And absolutely, if I'm elected, not only will I fight to reverse that, but I will absolutely fight to codify it into law. Now, further, I do believe that if we want to talk about life in this country, that there are some other areas that we really ought to be focusing on. For example, maternal mortality and infant mortality. We, as Americans, have the worst maternal mortality rate amongst any developed nation. And our infant mortality rate is almost twice that of the European Union. So I think there's a lot of hard work to do here, but I happen to believe that, and as I said in the beginning, I stand firmly against anybody opening up that Pandora's box that tries to take rights away from Americans.
Should there be a gestational age limit?
I think that Roe was good guideline. I think that the overwhelming majority of people, including the overwhelming majority of Hoosiers, happen to support the guidelines and the precedent that was set by the Roe v. Wade decision nearly 50 years ago.
On your website, you say Congress should support policies that foster economic stability and invest in training that will support high-wage jobs. And you alluded to that earlier. What are some specific examples of policies to that end that you would support?
So I happen to believe that we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity here in the district to rebuild our small towns and our middle class. And I think largely on the back of the resurgence of American manufacturing and the onshoring of supply chains back not only to America, but as we've seen Indiana already starting to be a big beneficiary of stuff from the CHIPS Act and some of these other things. Now, in order for us to continue to attract the world-class companies that we want to have here, I think we need to invest in workforce training and in education and in generally in making sure that our folks are prepared to meet the challenges that those types of jobs of tomorrow require.
What's your plan for dealing with the crisis at the southern border and the simultaneous crisis with our legal immigration system?
That's a really good question, and it's one that should have been answered a long time ago. I happen to believe, well, first of all, let's take a step back. This is an interesting debate because not only myself, but I think the majority of Americans are immigrants. From the founding day of this country, immigrants who come to this country legally and who contribute to our society and pay taxes and have been a vital part of the American experiment. Now, that being said, we clearly have an issue at the southern border. We need to make sure that our borders are safe and secure and that we keep out dangerous weapons and drugs and people who wish to do us harm. Now, the other side likes to talk about a border wall. They seem to be fixated on a physical structure. I'm an engineer. I happen to believe in the right tool for the job. And so to that end, I believe that there are lots of different technologies that perhaps might be more effective. I also happen to believe, and statistics would show, that a lot of the drugs flowing into our country come through our ports of entry and our points of entry. And so to the extent that we can improve the technology and the screening there, hopefully we can serve to reduce some of the inflow of those dangerous drugs. Now, I will point out that earlier in this session of Congress, there was a bipartisan bill going through that would have served to help secure the border. It was endorsed by the National Border Patrol Council, and ultimately the Republicans in Congress killed the bill at the direction of Donald Trump. Now, the problem with that is not only did it take a win away from the Biden administration, but it took a win away from the American people, and especially a lot of those families who are suffering with the drugs that make it through.
What about the legal immigration system?
So as far as legal immigration goes, I fully support a robust guest worker program. I fully support things like increased quotas for H-1Bs and other skilled workers. I fully believe that if we are going to attract the best and the brightest in the world as it relates to the skilled workers stuff, that we need to make sure after we educate these folks that we figure out a way to keep them in America so they can build their businesses and they can generate positive outcomes from their ideas right here in this country.
You said you want a Medicare for all option. How would you pay for it?
So, and I'm going to answer this in a little bit broader way. I happen to believe that America is home to some of the finest healthcare facilities and providers in the world. But I think what we absolutely lack in this country is a world-class way to pay for it. We have far too many people who have to pick and choose the vital health care that they need because they can't afford it, because it costs them thousands of dollars out of pocket before their insurance will kick in. Most studies show that more than half of Americans don't have $1,000 for an emergency expense, yet almost everybody's deductible exceeds that number. Now, as it relates to Medicare for all, I happen to believe Medicare for all who want to use it, a low-cost healthcare insurance plan that is run by a nonprofit-seeking entity, is vital to make sure not only that Americans are covered and they don't go broke by getting sick, but I'm also firmly in favor of people who want to keep the private insurance that they have. Now, I also happen to believe that there are a lot of things going on in our healthcare system, and this indirectly answers your question, but I actually think it's a big part of the answer. I think there's a lot of stuff going on in our healthcare system today that conspire to raise all of our prices. So we have lots of hospital groups who are consistently buying up physician practices, eliminating choice and raising price. We have insurance companies who consistently and continue to vertically integrate, whether they're buying pharmacies or benefits managers in the name of cost savings, yet none of those savings get passed along to us. And so I think a big way that we pay for that is to help try to increase competition in the healthcare system and drive the cost of delivery down.
Progressive Democrats have split from the mainstream party over its support of Israel in its war against Hamas. Where do you fall on that issue?
I happen to believe that Israel has a right to exist free from the constant threat of terrorism. I also happen to believe that there are millions of Palestinian people who also have a right to live free and happy and prosperously. And so I am all in favor of this conflict being wrapped up as quickly as possible with an amicable solution between both parties.
Would you support continued foreign aid for Israel?
Israel is one of our oldest allies in the region. I happen to believe that is our duties to stand not only behind Israel, but all of our allies in their time of need. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't hold them accountable for the way that they act, but I do believe that if someone is your ally, then you need to prove we need to prove that that is a lasting, durable relationship.
What's one issue we haven't talked about that you believe is not getting enough attention in this election cycle?
I think it's getting enough attention, but the one thing that we haven't talked about yet is the state of democracy in our country. I happen to believe that democracy is the sacred right of Americans and that we have to do everything in our power to protect and preserve that for future generations. Now, I happen to believe that the way that we act, whether people who are candidates for office or who are elected officials in this country, far too often are solely focused on winning, oftentimes at the expense of the people they profess to want to serve. And so I think we saw this, we've seen this time and again in our country, that bad behavior by people in leadership begets bad behavior by people who look up to those people for what to do. And so, a smart person once told me that if you're going to run for office, you better be able to make a list of the 10 things you want to do if you win. And I am tired of seeing the same negative ads on TV about what's wrong with the other person, who we should be afraid of, and who's to blame. I think we would be well served to get back to a point in time in our country where people talk about their ideas and what they want to do to help and who they're going to lift up. And so, we've been very intentional of running a campaign of ideas, a campaign that is inclusive, that tries to lift up not everyone in the district. And we talk about that a lot. How do we make the 5th district work for everyone? I just wish more people would do that.
What makes you the best choice in this primary?
I think the thing that makes me the best choice in the primary is that, there's a few things. One, I'm not looking for a career. So nobody has to worry about my motivations. I'm looking to roll up my sleeves and I'm looking to serve on day one all the way to the end of the term. And if I do a good job, then so be it. Folks might choose to reelect me. But at the end of the day, I'm not a politician. I'm a businessman. I'm a problem solver. I've spent my entire career solving really hard problems. And I think the kinds of people that we want to send to Washington are the people that do that kind of thing. I think we are far understaffed on people like me that are engineers. I think we've got plenty of lawyers and former state legislators. I think the diversity of thought and background that I bring to this would be instrumental in a lot of these conversations.
Ryan Pfenninger, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
That was Ryan Pfenninger, Democratic candidate for the 5th Congressional District. Remember, early voting continues until noon on Monday, May 6th. Primary day itself is on Tuesday, May 7th. And you can catch All Indiana Politics every Sunday morning at 9:30, only on Wish TV. I'm Garrett Bergquist. Thanks for listening.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.